working on just that. Oops.
Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
folks. That was my bad. We're recording now.
And same thing on the industrial, right? So there are meetings with landowners. There weren't that many people. Sadly, I was hoping there were more people in both of those meetings. One was in person. I missed that. I was out of town. Bill was there. I think Pete were there. So maybe they can share a little bit more about what came out of there. But that was a focused area. And actually, sorry, Matthew, you went there for me. So you could also kind of share a little bit from there. Next step, similar. Let's see, we're creating alternatives and preliminary recommendations for the industrial area that can continue community conversations and refined recommendations. All right, that's about it. And I'll post the summary and the full engagement presentation document. I don't know what to call it anymore, into our folder as soon as I get that. Any questions? And Bill, Pete, and as well as Matthew, if you guys want to add anything from NPI that I'm not covering here, that'd be great.
The only thing I'll add is that the industrial meeting was, I think, an excellent meeting, although very disappointing in the number of attendees. But the limited number of those of us that were there had a really robust discussion, and I think we really got a lot of things out. There was a lot of commonality of ideas and thoughts and agreement. So it was a great meeting. It was just very disappointing that we only had about, I don't know, eight people at most that were representing the neighborhood itself.
And the meeting was designed for the people in the industrial area specifically. So those landowners and developers, that's who was invited because it was a focused topic. It wasn't just an open meeting for the neighborhood, but rather the folks who are gonna build, who are gonna develop in that area.
Well, I don't know why the more property owners aren't interested in the positive effect that we can have on the future of Denver by doing the Sunnyside stuff. But as I agree with Bill, it was a very good, robust meeting, and we got a lot of stuff drawn up, and I've given that information to my guy, John, and he's working on the Sunnyside master plan, and it's going forward. So, and if anybody wants to take a look at what I'm doing at the property at 47, just let me know, because I'll do a tour of what's going on over there. But that'd be surprising.
Sorry, I think you cut off.
And what I mean by all the stuff happened is all the neighborhoods being able to be connected.
Yeah, I wonder, Pete, maybe in the future, maybe you could share kind of the vision that you've been working on with, your friend, for the area, and what you've, also given to NPI folks to consider, kind of make part of the record. Maybe we can share that at a future call. I think that'd be great for other folks.
Yeah, I mean, Bill has been pretty big in being able to talk with Don Foods and how all that stuff's moving forward. And I just, John's not far enough along really to share it with you, other than very primitive. But one of the things that he has for Don Foods, that site, is to make that the grocery store, for the neighborhood. So, but what we're going to do is, after John gets, a pretty good concept of what, he's seeing the master plan with all the things that all the different groups are wanting to do and what they want to see in 25 years. That's when I'll be able to show it with you, and then we can move forward from there to see what you guys like and what you guys don't like. So
thanks, Pete.
I hope you guys like it, though. I hope you like
I
it.
think it's great that somebody's working on it. I mean, somebody's taking, an initiative to do something this big for, obviously a rather large opportunity that we have. So I appreciate you you've taken that initiative to do it, and for coming and joining us on this call here as well.
I
Thank
forgot
you very
one.
much. I mean, go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to make a quick comment. I forgot one other disappointing aspect is that DHA has been totally absent thus far from the dialogue. So I think that's something we're going to need to work hard on, is bringing them to the table. There is a DHA representative on the steering committee for NPI, but I don't know that she's the right person to really give the level of engagement that we need as we plan this out.
Well, my whole thing, as a businessman and a property owner, is I do see the potential and the opportunity to have a positive effect on Denver in the future. And what I do here to address social issues that have been thrown over the fence for decades. Putting internet at the site, and when I'm access to the internet and have the computer so that they can access the internet. But I'm just starting off with what I'd like to be able to do for a positive effect. So we'll see what. So.
Thanks, Pete.
I have one last comment on the NPI, and this one is, there's the map that they've been drawing for the industrial area, and they've kind of identified the north area as medium density, up to 5, and the area closest, along Inca and light rail, they're saying, the proposed would be 8 stories. My question for everybody here is, have you noticed that the map doesn't extend all the way to 38th on Inca, and we do have industrial all the way down to that? Shouldn't the zoning, if they're looking at the zoning, extend the zoning all the way to 38th and not stop at 41st or something, or 40th, where they may be stopping today? Just an observation. I need to follow up with the NPI folks. I sent an email maybe a month ago when I first saw it. I haven't heard back, but I wanted to ask you guys, what are your thoughts on that?
My thought is we need to make our neighborhoods as interconnected as possible, pedestrian and bicycle wise. And that's part of our main goal, John and my main goal for the Sunnyside master, connect those 8 neighborhoods up in that area to the lower neighborhoods so that we can get to the Platte and then get to the east.
So that's not the issue. The issue is that the 8-story zoning, or what they're considering industrial, they've stopped it short of going all the way to 38th, and at least along Inca, right down to 38th, we do actually have industrial area right there. And it's currently, I believe, zoned as industrial. So my question to NPI, or my recommendation to the folks, is going to be, why not extend, at least on the Inca side, all the way down, because it's currently industrial? What are they planning on making that? Leaving it in light industrial and not rezoning to 8? So that's what I'm asking about specifically. Should this committee be recommending that they go all the way down on the rezoning, if that's what upzoning, what they, I assume the recommendation will be?
Yeah, I would concur with that.
Makes sense.
Bill, Rod, Jonathan, anybody else?
Makes sense, Trupti.
I think the maps they were showing were not intentionally trying to exclude down to 38th. I think they just were trying to focus on where the majority of it was, and they had a limitation on how big the page could be, and they wanted to make the area of focus as big as possible. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they are not thinking. Certainly, it should go all the way. At least at Inca, it should go all the way to 38.
Yeah, I think it might be an oversight rather than anything intentional. But I was just literally looking at that and saying, okay, but you've stopped, the highlighted area you're talking about as the proposal upzoning, it ended there. And, we do have an industrial building at the end that probably should be included.
Well,
okay.
I agree, Trupti, and without seeing the map, I mean, Bill's Bill could be right. The map may just have been for a size constraint. They were doing it, but I can point out many things that were oversights in zoning that just get codified into law because somebody didn't finish their thought. So it'd definitely be something I would definitely bring up.
Yep. You know, it's funny because my house is in a weird situation.
Okay,
like that.
folks, we got to
Thanks.
move along here.
Thanks,
So-
thanks. Oh, and actually, there is somebody on the line who is here for a public comment period. They might not have joined, and his name is Samuel. Samuel, if you want to, Bobby, is it okay for him to?
Sure, yeah, go ahead. Try to keep it to 2 or 3 minutes, Sam, but we'll let you go right now.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys. I was just finishing up work, getting a bite to eat. So I'm sorry I missed the public comment period. But yeah, I wanted to pop in today to talk about the lot on 44th and St. Hone. And I'm sure, I don't know if other people have brought this up, but for anyone who's not familiar, that was the old convenience store, the marijuana dispensary, and it all got scraped. So it's right across from the park. And from what I understand, that's, I think, just kind of what I've heard through the grapevine is the plan for that is supposed to be apartments. And that, you know, there's nothing we can do about that. It's really just up to the owner of that space. And, you know, as a community member, and I think, and I hope a lot of other people feel this way, I think that 44th is a really important commercial and pedestrian corridor. And me, you know, I live right in this area right there, would really like to have something of interest for pedestrians down on that commercial level, especially being across from the park and across from the coffee shop, you know, Radiator there. And so really, I think that if we're going to try and have any leverage in that situation, there's nothing really legal that we can do. I think it would just be organizing as a community and sort of appealing to the owner of that lot. But I just want to bring that up because that's kind of my idea and my vision, but I'm not by any means an expert on our role and what can be done there. So I'm curious, has anybody else brought this up? Is this being discussed?
So, and Sam, you are preaching to the choir. We discussed this extensively. I don't think it was in June, it was in May, I believe. We've made multiple overtures to that owner, to that property, to try to get them to, you know, amend what they're doing to restore commercial space on the first floor and get what they're doing. Our calls and, you know, emails and inquiries have gone unanswered. Tripti can elaborate more on that, but we're definitely concerned about a loss of our commercial spaces in the MS zoned areas of the neighborhood. Right now, nothing the MS designation does forces commercial space. So we're very concerned about that as the neighborhood as a whole. And we're looking to things we can do either with a Main Streets overlay or a DO8 overlay. But that is kind of going to be something that we'll probably start discussing and be picked up with our city councilor after the residential conservation overlay is completed in about 4 months here, as Trupti noted earlier. But that's at the top of our agenda, or our priorities list, and we're right there with you with the concern on those properties.
Cool. Real quick, I actually did get a call from Amanda Sandoval. I had reached out, I think on Facebook, and maybe even called her office, and she called me back and had kind of some good news, kind of some bad news. Like the bad news was, well, there's nothing that we can do legally. You know, the owner can do whatever they want. The good news was that Amanda has an overlay that I think was used on Tennyson Street that could also be applied to 44th Avenue. Again, probably more bad news, you know, is the timeline on that. I don't know what that would involve, getting that overlay passed here versus the timeline of construction on that lot. But yeah, I'm interested in being a part of that conversation and pressuring that owner. Has there been any thought of like community organizing, like a petition or something to just kind of like, you know, strengthen our voice there?
So we're pursuing that. The DO8 overlay is the Tennyson Street overlay, and we've discussed that with Amanda Sandoval. We haven't thought about any sort of, campaign or letter writing or anything like that. But we're interested in trying to do as much as we can, but we really want to be looking forward to not only this property, but the neighborhood as a whole, because there's many other properties that are at risk to this same sort of thing happening. I see a hand there, Pete, but we're kind of already over what's going on with our time here, and we have some guests waiting here in a little bit, so I'm going to need to keep going. But everyone, please stay on this topic, and we're very interested in it, and we want to keep discussing it here as a group. So stay connected with us, and we're going to be discussing it at the land use committee meetings for sure. But thank you for your comment, Sam. We appreciate it, and thank you for joining us. With that, I got to move along here to the final review of the land use committee bylaws. That's item 4.1 on the agenda. Do any land use committee members like to say anything about this before we, before I invite a motion for adoption? It's been a long labor of love. We've gone through several months of this, and I think we're happy that with the process and the amount of discussion we've had with the community to get where we are now. I'll also note that kind of the responses and explanation to our surveys and the discussions we've had previously are also hyperlinked on the agenda there at 4.1.1. But any other committee members?
Matthew, you use the word adoption. Are you saying that today's vote will make it official, or that it will take it then to the SUNY board?
So we discussed that exact thing with the SUNY board at the last board meeting. And the conclusion that the board came to there was that what happens at SUNY Land Use Committee is final, and they're not going to review things or appeal things or ratify things that we do, because they always have the option of dissolving this committee under the SUNY board bylaws. So that's kind of their oversight role, and they're not really going to get any more in depth with anything beyond that.
It's also made public to them as well. So if there are any issues, it's they're free to share those with us as well, and they haven't. I think a lot of it is they just trust this group, because the rest of the board is not on here, that they trust the folks on here. There's 2 board members on here as it is right now. So to make those decisions.
Any other comments, Jonathan, Rod? Okay, well, I will
put a lot of work into it, and they look really good.
Okay, well, I will invite a motion to approve the land use committee bylaws.
I move to approve the land use committee bylaws.
And I need a second.
Second.
Okay, so going kind of in order here, yay or nay, Rod,
Yay.
Bill,
Dane,
Jonathan,
Yay.
Tripti,
Yay.
and I'll say yay as well. So that is agreed to. Okay, thanks for that, folks. We'll go ahead and keep moving along here. I see our guests from Denver Water, Sarah and Travis. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being here. I don't know if you guys have slides or anything, but just let us know and we can hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We certainly have slides, of course. We are a government agency. We have slides. Thank you so much for having us. I just realized just now that while I didn't have my camera on, I was like not muted. So I hope nobody was distracted by any sounds coming from my house. But anyway, thank you so much for having us. I am going to share my screen, and if we have any issues, let me know, but you should be able to see right now our lead reduction program intro slide. Huh?
If we can see that.
Perfect. Okay, great. All right. So I am Sarah Behunick, and I am the Government and Community Relations Manager at Denver Water. And I am with Travis Thompson. He is the Communications Manager. Travis, you want to say hi?
Thanks for having us, everybody.
All right, so today I'm going to give you a very brief Denver Water overview. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of lead in drinking water. We'll talk about Denver Water's lead reduction program. We're going to talk very briefly about progress to date and what we're doing in 2022. I'm going to give you some information about a Sunnyside neighborhood construction project that does include lead service line replacement, and then we will provide some resources and have some time for questions. So starting with, who is Denver Water? We are actually the oldest utility in the state, and our water comes from snowpack. So that is why it tastes so delicious. I am absolutely convinced that Colorado water and Denver's water is the absolute best in the entire world. We serve 1.5 million people, and that's not just in the city and county of Denver. We also have service areas that are outside in the suburban areas and suburban communities. And, obviously water quality is a huge concern for us. We do more than 55,000 water samples each year and 200,000 tests. All right, and so we know that all of you are Denver Water customers. So getting to a little bit about some of our long-term water sustainability efforts. So in addition to water quality, conservation and water efficiency efforts are one of our major focus areas. So in fact, between 2007 and 2016, customers cut their per capita water use by 22%, despite a 10% population increase. And so after 2016, we really took that next step in evolving from water conservation to water efficiency. So that means we kind of went from telling folks to just use only what you need to helping them understand really how much they need to use, and that need for use actually will evolve as technologies change and community values evolve. So our approach now is just really more targeted, it's more customer centric, it's more personalized to what people are actually using. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later in this presentation. We also are focused on water reuse. That allows us to put the right water to the right use. So we have a recycled water program, and that actually takes treated wastewater from Metro Wastewater. Oh, actually that has been renamed, but Metro Wastewater for now, and treats it again, and then it goes to golf courses, it goes to parks for irrigation, goes to Excel for industrial use. And then another part of just our operations is new supply. So even with increased emphasis on water reuse and efficiency, we do have a responsibility to ensure that we are able to deliver safe, reliable water to our 1.5 million residents and future 8.1 million who will call Colorado home by 2050. So at the same time, we do understand that we must protect the environment and the economies that depend on water, like agriculture and recreation. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Travis, who's going to talk a little bit more specifically about our lead reduction program.
Right. Thank you guys so much for having us today. There is a ton to this program. It's an amazing program. I'm going to scratch the surface on it. Try to give you as much information as I can in a short amount of time. Always happy to take questions along the way or follow up afterwards as we go through this. Don't hesitate. Just stop me if you have a quick question. So to begin with, history of lead in drinking water. Honestly, it goes back thousands of years. The one interesting thing that we discovered in our research on it, Cleopatra actually was putting lead on her face every morning to put her makeup on. Romans used lead bowls to carry their water from place to place. And really the reason why lead was used so heavily in the first half of the century of the I'm sorry, in the first half of this 20th century is because it was cheap, it was easy to maneuver, and it was easy to find. So we're all very familiar with it in lead paint and lead gasoline. Well, another common use before 1951 across the nation was for pipes and plumbing. And for those exact reasons. In 1951, it was the industry standards across the nation. Denver Water did start banning it from developers to be able to use it when they were putting service lines into homes to connect to our system around that time. So our records aren't very great of where lead is in the city because it's actually not a product that Denver Water used in its system, but rather products that were used by developers in homes and for plumbing. Along the way, as the nation learned more and the science came out about lead in drinking water and the risks these plumbing fixtures were having on homes, more regulations started to come out around it. This timeline here, which I'm sure you can barely even read, we've got a bigger one on the website we can direct you to, kind of takes us through that. And it takes us all the way to in 2020 when we officially launched our lead reduction program. And what it is Denver Water taking a step that has never been done before by a water utility on its own to move the challenges with lead in drinking water further than what we've been able to in the past. So that's what we'll get into now. If you want to go to the next slide, Sarah.
Yes.
So once again, just to kind of reinforce what I already mentioned, Denver Water doesn't have the lead in its system. The water that we deliver to your homes throughout our system is lead-free. We test. Sarah mentioned how often and frequently we test to ensure that is the case. But as you can see in this chart right here, the lead service line is where the biggest risks to lead in drinking water come in. And those are the lines that developers put in when they build a property to connect to Denver Water system. Sarah, if you want to go to the next one. So what I'm going to take you through as quickly as I can, hopefully as efficiently and cohesively as possible, is the lead reduction program. There's five main elements in the program. Historically, where a water utility was able to make an impact to help customers who had lead risks in their home was at the treatment facilities, because once again, since it's not on our property, we've never been able to kind of get past that point to do anything further than that. And so the lead reduction program aimed to revolutionize that and move not only Denver, the state of Colorado forward, but we're seeing a lot of other things change because of this program, including the Safe Drinking Water Act and things that other cities are doing now. So I'll take you through each element of the program now, starting with corrosion control. So once again, we're able to kind of help protect customers, and Sarah, if you want to go to the next one, from our treatment plants. And we've been doing this for a long time. We've been addressing our pH, and what pH does is by increasing the pH levels of the water, a couple of things happen. One, it reduces the corrosivity of the water. So when water does sit in a pipe that might be made out of lead, it's not as corrosive. It's not going to be pulling as much of the lead particles out of that pipe into the water. Additionally, over time, it starts to build up scale, and that ends up being a protective coating that builds up in those pipes. So all this to say is we've had a 7.8 pH level, which is higher than that 7 for many years, and that has built this protective coating over time. So while no level of lead in drinking water is safe, our levels have been very low, and just because you have lead risks in your home doesn't mean you've been at high exposure this entire time. As part of the lead reduction program, we did 2 years worth of testing to see what it would do if we raised that level to 8.8 from 7.8. And after that 2 years of testing, where we actually harvested lead lines from people's homes, ran water through it at a higher pH level, we saw 60% reduction in lead exposure into that water. So as part of the program, the first thing we did is increase the pH level. And after 3 years of testing that, we've been able to show that it's actually reduce the level for those homes that are at risk. So if you want to go to the next slide. Another big part of the program was inventory. As I mentioned, since we did not put the lines in, we did not have good record of where they were. We had some knowledge. We had notes from when construction crews or our street crews would go through and make notes where they saw lead lines in the past, but we didn't have a good database. So that was one of the first things we had to get after and start figuring out where's the biggest risk in our communities. And based off of that, and obviously we have a ton of more information now as we're embarked upon this program, we have developed a database. If you go to denverwater.org/lead, it's on our homepage, and you can actually plug in an address. And what it is a very conservative view at where we think there's lead lines in our community. There's areas where we know for sure, and it'll tell you, we know for sure you have a lead line at your home. There's areas where we think that there might be, and it'll say that without confirmation. And then we, of course, have some newer areas throughout our community that don't have the risks, and we have documentation that they don't have a concern for lead, and that'll be marked as well. Next slide. So for those that we know have a lead line or we think might have a lead line, once again, a very conservative approach. First thing we wanted to do is while we work on this program, in addition to the protection that they get from the increased pH levels from our treatment plants, is we provided every one of those properties with a water pitcher and a filter designed to remove lead. And every 3 months, we provide a replacement filter for those folks. So if you are in the program or your property's in the program, you're very aware of what's going on. We've been sending you a ton of communication, and this is really where it's a group effort. We depend on our community to follow the instructions from the filters and make sure that they're using them properly while we work to get all the lead lines out of the community. As part of this, one of the big things that we really stress on, obviously the drinking water is the most obvious. If you're gonna fill up and have a drink, or if you're using it for baby formula, but something that people don't think about is if you're cooking foods that absorb water like rice and beans, you also need to filter that beforehand. So we've been working really hard to educate our community on how to use the filters until we're able to get to their homes to replace their lead lines. Sarah, if you want to go to the next one. And that leads us to the bulk and the biggest part of this program. And this is where we're extending where we've never extended before. And we're actually going to replace at no direct cost to any of the customers, every single lead service line in our system. So all of those homes that have been getting water pitchers and filters will be having their lead lines replaced within 15 years. We estimate there's between 64 and 84,000, and that's why it's a 15-year program. Obviously, you can't go rip up every street in the community in 1 year and rip them all out and replace them. It's just not feasible. And there's a lot of other considerations that go on with that. As part of our replacement, we have a prioritization model, though, to make sure that we're focusing on communities where they might have young children who would be most at risk to lead exposure, as it really has impacts to the developmental time. So areas around schools and daycare facilities. We're looking at a whole slew of things to this model to make sure that we're doing a prioritization in a way that supports the community, make sure that we're focusing on low income areas that might not have some of the other resources. And then of course, there's other considerations, such as if there's already construction going on in an area, we want to take advantage of that and maybe get into the street during that time. So we're not coming back a year later and ripping up the same street that might have just been replaced. The next one. So one thing that is important as part of this is in the process, when it is time for your property to have its line replaced, is we do an extensive investigation then, including even potholing, going into your home, needing to get consent forms. It's very much a partnership between Denver Water and its contractors working on this project and each property owner to come together so we can get these lead lines out. And most importantly, Sarah, if you want to go to the next one, that really helps us a lot is we will, as we get to that point, set water quality tests for homeowners to take. send back to us. It's all free of charge. And that gives us some good indication on if that area or that home might have a lead service line, and helps us with our inventory and our prioritization. You can go to the next slide. And then, of course, you know, what we're here doing tonight and what we have a whole team focused on doing around the clock. And it's making sure that we're communicating, we're doing outreach, and we're educating our communities about the program, what to expect, where they might be at risk. We're making sure we're focusing and tailoring for diverse populations. We want to make sure we meet people where they're at, and we're communicating with them in ways that they need. And we're doing a lot of targeted things, going out to community events whenever we can, being as open as we can for engagement. We have a learning by doing model. Once again, you know, no one's ever done this approach before. So every year we get a little bit better. We learn a little bit more. We get a little bit more efficient. If you want to go to the next slide. So some of this just kind of shows some pictures. Even during the pandemic, we were out there, masks on, in the community at any event that we could, to make sure. It was a time where water quality was more important than ever. People were at home. People didn't have the resources that they typically have. We wanted to make sure that they understood where the risks are and that they had the resources that they needed to protect themselves and their families. And as part of that, if you go to the next slide, what we've done is we've been partnering with ambassador program partners. Once again, meeting people where they're at. We understand that, you know, we don't have all the answers. We don't have all the relationships. So we've been working really hard with trusted sources within the communities that can help us connect and engage with everybody in our service area to make sure people know. And this includes even those who aren't in the program. There's a lot of scary information out there. There's a lot of companies that try to take advantage of moments like this. Well, they'll come through and try to sell you a water filter or a system to put on your home. In many cases, those are very expensive, and they might not even do anything about lead, but it could be sold that way. Or it might be taking care or creating more problems ultimately for our homeowner. So we just want to make sure that people know that they can come to us. We'll try to provide as many resources as we can to ensure that they know where the risks are and that they ultimately can trust the water. And if they are at risk of lead in their homes, what they can do about it to make sure their families are safe. I think that was as quick as I can go through those slides. So let Sarah hit the last few ones here and then take any questions.
Thanks, Travis. So while you were talking, my daughter came in and sat on my lap and was determined to stay with me until I completed this. And after your spiel, she So anyway, okay, well, I'm just going to very quickly talk about what we have done so far in the program and then give you a little bit more information about what's coming up in the Sunnyside neighborhood. So to date, we have replaced more than 10,000 lead service lines throughout the city and county of Denver. Here are some of the neighborhoods in which we have been working. We have also distributed more than 100,000 filter pitchers. We send those, as Travis mentioned, to all of the enrolled customers. We do have a pretty high filter adoption rate. So 81% is actually really great. And we're just continuing to strive to get that higher and higher. And so we do depend on speaking with community groups like this one to provide information. And so you can, learn it yourselves, but also talk to other people who you might know that are in the program. We also this year have launched a Spanish website, and as Travis mentioned, we do a lot to get out in the community and raise awareness. So this is where coming up a little bit later this summer or early fall, we are going to be replacing more than a mile, about 6,000 linear feet of pipeline that has just aged. So those are the water mains that you might remember from that picture where our water lines, our water service lines are, and then you have the property owned, like the smaller water service lines going into each house. So we are just doing a main replacement project, but to be efficient with our approach, we will be replacing lead service lines that we identify and confirm while we're going through this process. So this project will be about a year long. I don't know if you can see very well, but it's going to be along Bryant Street from 39th to 44th. It'll be on 39th from, see, I can't even see those smaller cross streets. Let me get that for you one sec. So it's going to be 39th between Clay and Bryant, West 40th between SUNI and Clay Streets, and then West 42nd between Federal Boulevard and Alcott. So, you know, Travis mentioned that we have our inventory map online, and I did go ahead and pull that up, and let me get this over for you. So this is what it looks like in the neighborhood. Those purple ones are confirmed lead service lines. They are included in the program. And then the blue with white are likely to have a lead service line, also included in the program. So all of these households, all of these properties should be getting a filter. And we'll be doing more investigation when this water main replacement project starts, and people will be getting more information if they are in the program. So we'll be doing some what we call potholing, and there'll be activity out in the streets. We will be doing more notifications to registered neighborhood organizations. There will be door hangers. So we will let you know when we are getting closer, and we'll be working individually with the property owners to schedule times to replace the lead line if it's been confirmed that they have one. And then we have one more slide. Travis was like, I'll let you drive the PowerPoint presentation. I'm sure he's regretting that at this time. I've lost my window. Here we go. Found it. And here we go. Here's the information, our resources. So if you want to learn more, denverwater.org/lead. It's also in Spanish. You can also learn more about Denver Water at our incredible newsroom, denverwater.org/tap. You can sign up to get regular updates. And here is a web or a email address specifically for the lead program and our emails. All right, we already have a question. Is it Trupti?
Yes, hi, thanks. Well, I actually in the program. I got the little purple dot. And I actually, maybe a few months ago, 3 months ago, also received those bottles for testing, right? The 3 bottles, do them 10 minutes, or I can't remember, apart, and then send it back to you. Then we got the results. Now, and I've seen chatter on Facebook with people getting this stuff, and well, what does it mean? So I guess what I'm trying to understand is, you've done the test and investigation on my property, right? And is this, does that mean I'm that much closer to the service line from the main to my house getting replaced?
I'm gonna let Travis step in for that. Travis, are you good to take it?
It does not necessarily mean you're that much closer. I'm not sure if you're on that map that you saw earlier. There's a few different times that we were looking to do those samplings. One of them certainly is when we're about to come to your home and have identified your home on the project list. As far as the project identification for where we're going to be replacing the lines goes, we're doing it the fall before each year, and we can't schedule it much further out than that. So for this year in 2022, the areas that have been identified, you can find on our map already, and you can go there and see if you're one of those. Like I said, there's a few reasons why we might be looking to get some of the water sampling. Sometimes it might be an area where we have more uncertainty, and we're just trying to get some better data as we're going in there. So unfortunately, I can't say with any certainty for your situation.
I appreciate that. And so I just want to clarify, you say each fall you identify the properties for replacement for the following year.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So this fall I should check, or, to see if that's, I guess maybe even last year's I should check, right? Because I don't know, this year's not over. And that 1-year program that we're talking about, the pipeline, the mains that are being replaced by you guys, you said it was going to be about a year-long project. Do you have a tentative, almost approximate start date on that?
That's an excellent question. I can check in and get back to you to see if we are any closer to knowing something beyond late summer, early fall. But with our pipe replacement projects, like our big mains, there is a lot of movement until we get really close. So I can see if we have anything more concrete. But at this time, that's the most precise information I have.
And last question, now let others go. We are having our our monthly happy hour next Tuesday. Obviously it's gonna be more than the 8-10 people that are on here. So if somebody wants to come and hand out information or be available to take questions, I'm just inviting you. I'm sorry, it's a little late, but I can send you that information if you're interested. It's from 6 to 8 on a Tuesday.
Yeah, that would be great. I was like, wait, is she about to invite us to happy hour?
Yeah. Yes, inviting you to happy hour, and we do them monthly, right? So we'd like to bring more information such as this to the community, because not everybody can make this call. So thank you very much, and I'll send that information to you guys.
Great.
Rod, go ahead.
Oh, you're on mute.
You're muted, Rod.
I think that basically answered my question. I am on that 42nd Street line from Federal to Alcott. And I was just wondering if they're on track, what their schedules are looking like for the late summer, fall. But as far as they seem to be that's what they're still targeting.
Yes, and that's when the actual main replacement project will start. And then there will be, at that time, there will be efforts to specifically identify, confirm all those lead lines on each street. And I'm not sure the actual, like how those streets are going to be approached, which ones first or which sections.
Okay.
So when I have more information, we'll certainly be providing that to you.
We're on the filter pitcher, we've been doing that, and we're on the update email list, and I replaced my line from the meter to the house in 2000, so I know it's copper from there. So if there's any residual lead, it's only from the tap to the meter, and it's a short 8-foot stretch. And I've tested my water repeatedly, and there's no indication of lead in the water testing. So yeah, I didn't, the strip doesn't turn, the lead testing strip that you can get. So I'm not too worried about it, but it's more about how long, it says 2.5 months on the website that the street will be tore up. So it's like, it'd kind of be nice to know when our street's going to be gone.
Yeah, we typically, so I will say that we typically do a few blocks at a time. So it's not like the entire swath is going to be a complete,
Right, 2.5
Correct.
months.
Yeah, it's like in sections so that hopefully it's manageable, and it does take some time even when we're tearing up portion by portion, but
Yeah, no, understood. I just didn't know if they had a definite date yet. So thank you.
yeah.
Tripti? Tripti, your hand's up. I don't know if you had a further question or not.
Sorry, I was on mute. One thing you guys did not mention was the program that if a homeowner replaced their own, that you guys pick up 50% of it. Is that still ongoing? Because that could be an important thing potentially, and I'm wondering if you guys can add that information to the slide deck that we will then make available to the public. But that could be something people are interested in.
Yeah, and the most important thing in that one is to make sure that you get pre-qualified and go through the process before doing it. If someone does it and then sends in information in, it won't qualify.
Oh, come on, I can't dig up that receipt from 2000.
Exactly. I know. Unfortunately, no. But yeah, that's a great point, and it's something very important to mention to people that we do have a program that we can look at some partial reimbursements. They go through it through the process. So thanks for that. We'll put that in there.
Thank you.
Good recommendation.
Okay, any other questions for Sarah or Travis? Jonathan, go ahead.
So the lead that you're talking about is not just from your meter to your home, but also from the main to the meter.
Yeah, so in many cases, that's the meter's a stop in the middle. It's usually was put in by the developer on both sides at the same time. So in a lot of cases, it's going to be led all the way through. So we will, as part of that investigation, and as Sarah had mentioned, we'll do that potholing. And that's because we want to actually get a visual inspection on both sides. So you can usually go inside the home or at the meter and see half of it, and then you'll pothole in the street to see the other half and determine if it's a full line or a partial. Either way, we'll go in, pull the whole thing out, or pull out what is necessary and replace it with copper. But there's a good chance that you'll have the whole line, unless, as Rod mentioned, he had already had from the meter to the house replaced. There's a good chance you'll have the whole line as one type of material.
Okay, that's about it for us on time. Thank you so much, Sarah and Travis. We appreciate you being here tonight, and we will go ahead and share those slides out with our distro list. And as always, you're welcome at our sippers, either this upcoming one or anyone in the future.
Hey, getting invited to happy hour after presentation, that's better than putting Sarah's daughter to sleep. So thank you.
I put the Eventbrite in the chat. Please register just so we have a count.
Great, got it.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, guys. Okay. And with that, we will hand it over to Grace Ramirez is here with us from Excel Energy to talk about a whole host of things. Is Sarah still sharing her screen?
I actually don't have a slide deck prepared. Hello, everyone.
Oh,
Hello,
that's fine.
neighbors. Hello, neighbors. Yeah, I'm Grace Lopez Ramirez. I'm the Community Affairs and Local Government Affairs Manager for the City and County of Denver for Excel Energy. And I'm actually also a neighbor. As I was listening to the Denver water presentation, I heard that presentation at Chaffee R&O a couple of years ago. So my street, I'm at 50th and Decatur, so I'm just a little north of Sunnyside and on the other side of 70. And we're kind of living towards the end of that project here in Chaffee Park. It's been here for a little while. So if anyone wants to chat about that, I can't make the sipper at Radiator, unfortunately, but I'm happy to chat with that to you about that. Yeah, so Bobby, I reached out to the RNO back in like March or maybe it was February, Bobby. I don't remember when I sent out my kind of intro email to everyone. I've been in this role here at Excel Energy for about 6 months. I'm new. I come from the city and county of Denver, where I did neighborhood engagement for a variety of different city agencies for the last 7 years. I was born and raised in Southeast Denver and have spent the better part of my life as a Denverite. So happy to be here with you guys. I've actually attended a couple of meetings in the past and previous roles that I had with the city and county of Denver. So bear with me because I'm not an engineer and I've never worked for a utility company, which is so highly regulated. Well, I've never worked for a utility company, but definitely never, so there's a lot to learn, and I'm learning that it's highly regulated and there's a reason for everything essentially, right? So I got a list of questions that I understand, Bobby. I don't know if you guys had collectively pulled those together. I don't have a slide deck, you guys. I'm happy to formulate my notes that are handwritten and also kind of just typed up in quick format for me to peruse as I was doing this, chatting with you guys and having this discussion with you guys. But I'm happy to formalize that in a handout that I can send to Bobby as a follow-up to this, since I do see that the meeting is being recorded and you will want to share out to the other members. But Bobby, did you want to have me just read the questions? Did you guys formulate the questions?
Yeah, just go ahead and go through them. A lot of these are things we've kind of been talking about off and on as a group for a long time. So where some, it just depends, but go ahead. Okay,
sounds good. So I'm just going to read them out loud because I can't even honestly, the way I have them kind of I'm between so many different things, my answers. Like I said, I'll put this in a quick FAQ and send it back out in the next day or so, or a couple of days or so, actually being realistic, to Bobby. But so the first question I received was, Does Excel have long-term plans for burying power distribution lines in the city and county of Denver in the older parts of the city where they are still above ground level? I know this is a question that comes up a lot, the undergrounding of lines in Denver. It comes out up from different council folks. I had a conversation yesterday with a council person about this. And it's a complicated issue, honestly. The first issue I would say is that the franchise agreement that we have with the city and county of Denver is really dedicated to right-of-way and other city property. So when we're talking about undergrounding of either transmission lines or distribution lines, and distribution lines are the ones that we see in our neighborhood. It's the ones we see down our alley. It's those wooden poles that are a little bit lower, where the telecom lines are kind of the lower lines and the power lines are the higher lines, literally distributing power from the substation. And we can talk about the substation on Inca here in a few minutes, but from the substation into our neighborhoods, right? Well, those distribution lines, again, are mainly in public right-of-way. But what happens when you're undergrounding is that we could stay in public right-of-way in the alley, but then to connect to the individual homes or businesses is going on private property. So that actually requires an easement with the private property owner for every single house on that block, every single property on that block to be able to underground. That's kind of like the first thing. It's hard because you can imagine that takes a lot of organizing block to block to block and years and years and years of getting essentially those easements and that paperwork to get an easement for every single property. And the way distribution lines work through our neighborhoods, in order to make undergrounding kind of cost effective, you have to do it across a whole neighborhood. The entire system can technically be undergrounded, but my understanding, it's not really an Excel call, and it's not really the city and county of Denver completely either, because it has to be approved by the Public Utility Commission to a certain extent. And that goes back to the highly regulated system that we live in. And I can go into that a little bit more, but there's a couple of other reasons why it's kind of difficult for us to do some undergrounding, and I want to go through those a little bit more. How should I put this? I'm looking through my notes again, bear with me. Currently, several projects that are being undergrounded are being done at the request of the city. So there is a list. As part of our franchise agreement, we do work very, very closely with the Denver Office of Infrastructure, Transportation and Infrastructure, the former Public Works. DOTI is the acronym. We work really closely with DOTI since they manage our franchise agreement. As part of that agreement, we have a bucket of funds that we hold for city projects, and we work with the city to identify where we want to spend those city project dollars. The city currently has that, and it's the city's decision on those things. We would have to invite someone from the city to really better understand how they prioritize projects on that coming out of that fund. But my understanding is that fund right now is built out for 3 years. As a former city and county as a former city and county employee, I can tell you that I would probably have a hard time as the city understanding where I'm going to, what older part of the city I'm going to prioritize first, because it's an old system, and we're constantly every single day investing in the infrastructure that provides more reliable power. And we can understand, of course, that the question of undergrounding is coming up more and more with climate change and these like freak weather events that we're having. The spring snowstorm in May that had some outages, because the branches falling on distribution lines. Absolutely understand that, and that's a conversation, honestly, you guys, that we have I have weekly with DOTI, because we get a lot of different requests to do that. But it's a pretty complicated process, and the projects that we currently have undergrounding in the city are all along right of way in parts of the city that have seen higher outages. I can tell you that happens in Southwest Denver a lot. We have a project along Florida Avenue right now that's going west along Florida Avenue, and it's taken 3 years right now to get the easements on the 4 or 5 private properties that we have to go through in order to underground that line. So it's a difficult process. It's not one that's impossible, but it is one that that would take a significant financial investment by a lot more people, and would take a great deal of time. And it's done in partnership with the city and private property owners, literally like lot to lot. And so the ones that you see across the city normally are done by developers. Developers usually will underground lines, and that's at the cost of the developer, so that doesn't come back to ratepayers, to customers within Excel. And that's again part of this highly regulated tariff that we live under at Excel. And I'm not an expert on that, but my understanding is that's why that cost really falls on individual property owners when they do want to underground, because it has to really be the will of the property owner. So big developments that are buying large swaths of lots are more inclined to do that. And the house to house in residential neighborhoods, there's just a lot of challenges with that for the reasons I've explained. Are there any questions on undergrounding of lines?
Tripty, you had a hand raised.
Yeah, hi, thanks. So, I wanted to just preface that one of the reasons we're asking about this underground piece of it isn't necessarily for all of Sunnyside, but specifically for the industrial area that is currently getting rezoned, upzoned, and, high rises and development is happening. And, we thought that doing it when, everything's being torn up is the right time to do it, not later. But, it sounds like the developers themselves can do this. We're not sure that they can. We thought Excel had to allow something like this rather than it would be up to a developer. And I guess for this group, if, we should look into whether that is something we ask for, on an going forward basis with any of these large developments that come to us, if that makes sense. I don't know what the rest of it, the pieces are, like the Public Utility Commission and some of those other things. Could be a side meeting all by itself to figure out if a developer and a landowner is able to do this, what do they need to do? Obviously there's a cost, but what other hoops do they have to jump through to make this happen?
They don't have to jump through any extra hoops. I mean, if they own the property that we need the easement to be able to underground under, and they agree to pay for it, because essentially the way we're regulated is, and again, I'm not an expert on this, bear with me, and I can dig deeper into this, but essentially the way that the rate system works for all of our utilities, we would all basically be paying towards undergrounding that line for them as customers of Excel within the state of Colorado. It's not just within our city and county of Denver. It's like the way that we're regulated, that cost goes across everybody that pays into the system. And that's why it's unfair to like pay it into just a private development instead of paying it into a community, right? That might already have existing lines. But the problem with existing lines is, again, we're replacing poles. If you guys see poles that are leaning really scarily and you're like, oh, hell no, please email me, because we are trying to replace poles. I got a whole list of them from, I get, pole requests constantly. If we need poles removed, if poles are looking scary, we are trying to replace poles to, again, invest in that infrastructure maintenance so that we don't have, that we can provide that reliable power. But developers have that privilege, they can do that. They can write that in as part of their capital costs. And there aren't any very much, we work with developers from the onset usually of their development to make sure that we are securing enough power when they come to us and they say, hey, we're going to build 4 buildings and they're multi-story and they're multi-use, and we think that it's going to use this many mega kilowatts of power. We have to plan for the capacity to be able to reach the capacity of that development. And as part of that pretty initial conversation that we have with them, the question of undergrounding can come up, and it's a fairly simple process. They just need to be willing to pay for it. which can be very, very costly, even on their own property, right? Because we don't want that cost to go to all of our customers in the state of Colorado, because it's a private company that's requesting that for them for their own property, right? So it's one of those things also that you have to have the private property owner, be okay with the easement, and it's not a guarantee, and it's time consuming if it is residential and not a new development, right? Like an established neighborhood. And it's difficult because as Excel, we can't force a private property owner to do that. We can't condemn property, right? We don't have that authority. That's why we try to keep these projects in the public right of way, because that falls under our franchise agreement with the city and county of Denver, with Dottie, who we work with every single day. So it's really
Grace,
complicated.
we only have about 10 minutes left, and I know we had a couple other topics we wanted to get
Okay.
to. So I
Thank
just
you.
Okay.
wondering if we can kind of bridge this into probably the next question on we have been having on pad mounted versus vault transformers, and what Excel allows or doesn't allow with that.
So the industry standards is that the vaults the transformers need to have sky over them. I mean, it's kind of simple, but the customer must provide room for utilities to be open to sky. So having things placed underground, there is a boundary. You are correct. There is. Do you want me to read the question? I'm just kind of skipping into that without knowing if you guys are aware.
Yeah, I think everyone here is familiar with the background on this.
Okay, so essentially the underground vaults are only permitted within Denver metro boundaries. And that was a rule that was established like 50 years ago. So you could potentially see some undergrounded transformers that are really old, like from like the 20s, 30s, 40s in Denver, outside of Denver metro boundaries, which is literally just like downtown and a little bit more. Sunnyside falls out of the metro Denver boundaries. So you are correct that downtown, Golden Triangle, parts of Rhino do fall within the Denver metro boundaries, but not Sunnyside. And that is like, honestly, I was trying to get to the heart of the rule of that, who set those boundaries, but it really comes down to the fact that it's really, really, it's kind of a high risk to have that really specialized equipment underground. There's other issues with it in the sense that on average, it costs about 4 times the amount of a typical pad mount that would be outside. And again, it's industry standard to have it outside. And so we're following nationwide industry standards. I can share with you guys our standards like booklet. It's like a big old blue, we call it the blue book. I have a link to it. It's public information. It's on our website, and I can point you to the pages that talk to this a little bit more as far as why, what is allowed and what is the standard. But I don't know if anyone has any other questions on that before I, go on to the next question.
Grace, just to clarify there. So I understand the difference between a pad mount and something like in a well, that some older things you see where like it's in the street, but under the ground in a well. But does that include vault transformers that are within a building, like we see in Rhino, downtown, Golden Triangle? Is that Excel will not allow a vault above ground in a building in Sunnyside? Is that?
No, it is a preferably we prefer it above ground and open to the sky. So for safety reasons. Okay. Am I answering your question? So the ones that we see downtown, it was an exception that was made that we really can't make anymore, right? And we're not approving anymore. And in fact, you won't find any outside of the Denver metro unless, again, they're really old buildings or, I think there's one random one up in Westminster that was kind of like a mistake because it's basically unsafe. And so we allow them in the Denver metro district because they're near the network. And this goes back to this network, the network vaults. That's why we allow them in Denver metro boundaries, which Sunnyside falls out of because of their proximity to the network.
Okay, I think that answers that.
Okay. The next question, if there aren't any, I'm just in front of my notes, so I'm not looking at the screen. So, flag me down if somebody has their hand up. But
real quick.
Go ahead.
Sorry, this is Matt Keating with Oz Architecture.
Okay.
We're currently doing a couple of projects with you.
Okay.
both in Sunnyside, Golden Triangle downtown. This is one that I think that the committee should, definitely the MPI should consider or put forward. The loss of square footage that is attributed to putting a transformer on a site and have it open to the sky is pretty considerable, especially when you start talking 8 to 12-story projects, because that is a 20 by 15 zone that is open, and you lose all of the yield for that space, the entire height of the building. Golden Triangle is one of the few areas that does allow for the vault. I do not believe that they should go underground. I agree with that statement, but the ability to put them within inside of a building, they come with a very specific set of parameters. The space is a 3-hour enclosure, has ventilation, meets a ton of other requirements, but it does allow for that increased density on some of these sites that really, when we're looking at TOD areas, districts like this, in the future, we need every available piece of land to achieve that density. And when we start cutting out significant chunks of land for either Dottie, Excel, or generators, that is a big hit to the yield to these buildings, which affects affordability, affects affordable housing, and just our general ability to program these buildings.
Sir, what was your
I would-
architecture firm again?
Architecture.
I'm sorry, what you when you introduced yourself, you said you were working on a couple projects. I just wanted to try to take notes.
Sure. I'm working on 42nd and Calumet right now with Oz Architecture. We've also got projects at 955 Bannock and currently 20th and Blake. So we're working in multiple districts throughout the city. And what we've seen is that when we are required to place a transformer on grade, open to the sky, you lose not only the land at the ground, but all of the land vertically, because you cannot have any openings, you cannot have any, I mean, there's a lot of parameters around these pieces of equipment that are, you don't see the real ramifications until you start to lay these out.
I think one of the other difficulties for us with this is that, you know, there's very specialized crews that are there's very few specialized crews that are permitted to work in and around these vaults when they're underground like that within the Denver metro boundary. And, you know, it requires additional training, and of course there's additional cost. And I think that's, you know, a little bit to what you're speaking about, Matt, because in the end, you know, that's a part of it, right? You know, the additional resources. But it is industry standard. And you know, I'm again happy to share the link of our blue book with some notes about the page numbers on that if folks would like to dig deeper. Bobby, would you like me to go on, or is there another question?
Yeah, go ahead and keep going, Grace. We're about at time, so we just probably have time for just one more.
Okay, thank you, Matt, for your comments. I appreciate that. So number 3 was, how can Sunnyside take advantage of the transportation electrification plan? We'd like to see more public electric charging stations in the neighborhood. I would like to too. I don't own an electric vehicle, but yet, right? Eventually one day I'd like to own one. I am currently still working with the city's climate office to finalize our electric vehicle agreement with them so that we can provide public charging stations. We're working with the city to still identify where those would go. I know one of them will go to help power the fleet up at Roslyn for Dottie, but we're leaving that up to the city to a certain extent as to where they want to place them, and for various, you know, reasons that, you know, they're looking into to where they want to put them. I know there's a lot of interest in placing them along highway corridors. So I think Sunnyside has like a really good chance of potentially getting one, given the proximity to I-25 and I-70. from, one corner of Sunnyside in any case, and the proximity to I-70 again at the, the north side of Sunnyside. So that's something that I'm hoping to, we're hoping to finalize that agreement before the end of the summer so that the city and county of Denver can take advantage of some really awesome EV opportunities that we have. I'll also note that we have an EV wiring rebate currently, that if you are interested in getting the EV charge in your garage, if you do already own an EV EV car, there we do have an EV wiring rebate currently. And I can share the link on our website to that as well. The next, any questions on EVs? Okay, hearing
am
none.
I correct in that? Well, am I correct in that if you are considering a improvement to your single family house, i.e. an addition or an ADU, are you required to install an EV charger to your garage to future-proof your property?
That is a question for the Climate Office or the Community Planning and Development Office as part of the Energize Denver policy that was just passed in I think, December out of council. I honestly am not an expert on that. And that would be a requirement that the city would have on any new builds. That would not be a Excel requirement. But if it is a requirement for the city, we do have the wiring rebate.
Go ahead, Rod.
Matt, I can answer that. I'm going through an ADU on my house and a couple other projects, and you don't have to put the charging station in. You just have to provide the circuit in the garage to accommodate one.
Okay, so you have to be EV ready, but not EV
Correct.
capable.
Right. It's
Okay.
basically a 220 outlet. I forget if it's I think it's a 50 amp circuit, or might be a 30 amp circuit, 220.
Did you have to run the conduit to your garage to a specific location to accommodate that, or
No, it didn't give me a specific
just in the
location,
panel?
and it's a new build garage. It's not a retrofit, so I'm just wiring it as I build it. Yeah, so it did not give a specific location in the garage. It had to be just that you show, and you do need to call it out on your plans with a note that says, this is my EV location, on your electrical plans.
Yeah, but if you have a detached garage and you're feeding it off of your primary residence, then you would have to underground that, which you're going to do anyway for your ADU. So
yeah, exactly.
Sure.
It's just taken into account when you do your load counts.
Sure. Yep. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rod. Any other questions on EV charging in the neighborhood? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna roll to the next question that was somewhat related, but not really.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so the fourth question is, in addition to vehicle electrification, Sunnyside land use is trying to find ways to encourage new developments to eliminate natural gas use and build completely electric facilities. What Excel programs are available to incentivize use of technologies that reduce gas use, including heat pump, water heaters, air handlers, conduction stoves, etc. We just kind of talked about this a little bit in the sense that Energize Denver did just pass the city. I know the Climate Office is working closely with Community Planning and Development, which I know is swamped right now with planning, with a whole bunch of different projects coming in June. But they, the city, we are partners with the City and County of Denver and with the Climate Office in reaching Denver's electrification goals, and that is 100% electrification by 2030, which is 8 years away. We meet with the Climate Office in 4 different working groups that looks at every different aspect of electrification. And we have a working group that looks specifically at how do we maximize rebates that the city is going to be offering with the rebates that we already offer, and which rebates we need to include to match, so that the City and County of Denver residents get the most rebate they can in order to make this electrification switch by 2030. You guys all saw probably around Earth Day that CASR, the Climate Office's acronym is CASR, and it's a really long name, so everyone calls it CASR. So Caster had some really great media back in April when they announced their electric e-bikes, which again made a splash this week, as you guys may have seen. But they also announced, there some other rebates that we worked hand in hand with them on, including heat pumps. So we do have a list of vendors that we work with. We were working, partnering with the city to make sure that the vendors talk to each other, that they have the right training, that they understand our rebates and which one has to go first and those kinds of things. So for now, it's been really a focus on heat pumps. I know we're talking to Denver about some of the other types of rebates they're going to be offering for other appliances, including, gas furnaces when they reach the end of their life. And we understand that, some people might have just gotten gas furnace, and they have a long shelf life. So, that plays into reaching those electrification goals by 2030. But yes, we do have quite a few. They're on our website. They're not quite stoves and furnaces yet, but we do have some rebates for water heaters. We have heat pumps. We do have some that will help get us there, but we're definitely partners with the Climate Office, meeting on that day to day. You may all have seen that the city just passed the biggest contract that has ever come out of the Climate Office on Monday, with a $41 million contract to an energy consulting firm that's going to be essentially implementing those rebates for them. And so there's definitely more to come as far as rebates and how do we make it more cost effective for Denver residents to be able to make the switch. I'll just be very transparent in saying that I think that there are some residents in the city and county of Denver that really love their natural gas, not just for their stoves, but also for their gas fireplaces and some other appliances that they may use. So I think that there's a lot of education that still needs to happen to reach that goal, but we're definitely partners in it. Is there any questions on that for that?
What do you mean when you say 100% electrification by 2030? Do you mean turning off the natural gas to the city because everybody is converted to electric?
So I think that's what the Climate Office is hoping for. But it's a lot more complex than that. We have, there's been a couple of big cases before the Public Utility Commission about natural gas use in all of our jurisdictions that we offer natural gas. I can tell you that our carbon-free goals are at 2050, not 2030. So we are working as partners with the city and county to try to meet that goal, but there are, some obstacles in the way. You can imagine, a lot of restaurants like to cook with gas stoves. And that's, a large swath of our small business community, right? So I think there's a lot that's going to go into meeting that goal, whether Denver is able to meet it or not. I think, I hope, right? Because we all are seeing the climate change happen every day, but there's some challenges there. But yes, Jonathan, I think that, yes, they're really hoping to try to get as much as possible to that 100% electrification by 2030. Any other questions on that before I go to, I think, our last question? Okay.
Real quick, are you following the EUI credits and how we achieve those through the next 2030, 2040, 2050?
Honestly, I don't think I can speak to that tonight, Matt. I'm happy to look into that. But no, I just really prepared for the questions that Sunnyside had sent out to me. And I'm new to this whole utility world. So I'm happy to follow up if you'd like to drop your email in the chat. I can do that.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so the last question I have from Bobby and the crew here is that in addition to the previous issues mentioned, we were wondering if you could look into improvements to the 43rd and Inca substation. Has Excel ever considered improvements like the one made at the Barker substation that could be done to the 43rd and Inca substation? So this is something that I'm actually been really intrigued by. Substations are all over the city. In order to provide reliable power, substations need to be in the neighborhood. They're in pretty much every neighborhood in the 78 neighborhoods of the city and county of Denver. Not quite, right? It really depends on where our transmission lines come in and a whole bunch of engineering factors that frankly I won't go into. But there are a lot of substations, and there's a lot of them that have residential neighbors that are looking for ways to, you know, kind of disguise it. It is kind of an eyesore. I did drive by and I, you know, I looked it up online, and I'm familiar with, you know, the lot. One of the things that I would really like to do, and one of the things that we're doing as we're building new substations across the state, including here in Denver, is that we are looking to work with the community to see how we can essentially beautify the facade of these. There are some examples. Barker was highlighted in a Denverite article a couple of weeks ago. For those that are not familiar, Barker is a substation that we have yet to energize. It actually has been sitting kind of half done since the 90s when we acquired that property. It's a block away from Coors Field. It's on Market and 21st. And the facade is a really, really tall red brick wall, and it's on a corner, and the red brick matches the red brick of Coors Field. So it kind of like blends in, if you will, right? And substations have to be open on the top, right? They don't have roofs, so that we can connect that equipment into the transmission line, as you guys, I'm sure, are familiar at 43rd and Inca. So it's really about the walls or the facade, and how can we work with the community to make that happen? We have a ton of substations, and most of them are already built. Some of them have had, like especially the ones downtown. We have one at 13th and Alati. We have one at across from Sunny Lawson Park on California Street in 5 Points. We have one right in Capitol Hill at 13th and Pearl. Some of those in more central Denver have seen a lot more urban camping from our unhoused residents. That's something else that we're working with the community on. How do we beautify and become a part of the community, a fabric of the community, be good neighbors to our neighbors by beautification of the substations. I'm just, you know, I'm 6 months in. It's something that I personally take very seriously, but do we have a real concrete plan and a budget for it right now? No, but it is something that we're planning on doing. We have a few that we've prioritized, again, given some of the security and safety issues that we've seen at some of the more central substations in Denver. But beautification and how do we become better neighbors with the facade of our substations is something that we're looking at very seriously in the next couple of years. And I hope to implement in every single substation in the city and county of Denver. But it's really like early days there. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, Bobby. Well, I'm happy to write these notes up into like a more formalized FAQ and shoot them over, including with the link to our Blue Book standard. And then I don't see that Matt, it doesn't look like Matt has dropped that in yet, his email, but I'm happy to try to follow that up if I just have a little bit more information. Because I'll be honest with you, Matt, I don't even know what EUI stands for, friend. Because so please let me know if you guys would like me to follow up. I just need some contact information and a little bit more there, so I can follow up on that one question.
Can you also include the EV charging rebate for folks who may want to do that in the garage, so we can share that with the community?
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I've got one coming up, so I could use that.
Awesome.
Read carefully, Ron, because I believe the way it works out is you have to hire somebody to do it. You can't do it on your own during your own build, even if you're past the electrician test in Denver.
Interesting.
Oh, I'm not GCing this myself. I gave up my
Okay.
GC license 5
And
years
you
ago.
don't end up owning the charger that they
Oh,
help
yeah,
provide
well.
you.
Well, it's part that goes back
So-
to, I can speak to that a little bit if you guys want, but we're trying to better understand when we are putting in EV chargers in homes, how much energy that uses, just to go back to the advanced grid. So as we're monitoring and trying to harness renewable energy at the correct times, we're trying to have a better understanding of how we plan for that power. And that's why we're you know, essentially we're trying to gauge how. And that's why we're owning that piece of the equipment. The city does also have a matching EV wiring rebate that currently, I'll be honest with you guys, the two rebates kind of don't work that well together. There's a little education there that I'm happy to like copy my colleagues in the climate office that work on EV stuff to better answer how their rebate works. But there are two rebates. There's ours and theirs.
Well, and the truth is I don't really need one because the car comes with a level 1 charger. And so I just use that one. It just plugs into a 110 outlet. I would like to upgrade to a level 2 charger though. So
Okay.
anyway,
Well, I'll
Thank
include
you.
that then for sure. Okay, well, thank you so much. Bobby, anything else you need from me? Anything else I can share at this point? If not, I will work on these responses and get them over to you. Honestly, probably early next week, if that's okay.
Yeah, no hurry, Grace. And we'll send that out to our distro list and everything so we can, follow up with any other questions with you.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I'm gonna go eat some dinner. So thank you all so much. Please
Thanks,
feel free
Grace.
to invite me for any other future questions that you might have.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you,
care.
guys. Thanks everyone for staying after.
yep. Hey,
Okay,
just had
I
two
need a
quick-
motion to adjourn. Or go
Okay,
ahead,
yeah,
Aaron.
okay, do the motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, that's agreed too.
Just one quick thing. I noticed at the bottom of this tonight's minutes that you left it for the next meeting being tonight instead of August, I think it's 11th.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, just that. And then the other thing was earlier this evening, I'm on the CNU Colorado board and we had our meeting, and I hope you don't mind, Trupti. I just shared the SIPR invite to them and emailed it because I want to have a little bit more in community engagement with CNU
Awesome.
and us. And so I invited those that might be interested in coming, and I sent them the link.
Every time, do it.
So
I mean-
I'll have some literature over there, and she's going to get me like a little banner for Congress for New Urbanism that I thought I would just kind of like bring over to Radiator on Tuesday.
Have everyone register because the.
Yeah, I told him to register on the thing, and I sent him the link that you sent out. So
Perfect. All right, wonderful. Thank you,
cool.
guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
And real quick,
Oh.
to Trupti's question earlier, density at 38th and Inca is, yeah, I mean, that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Get as dense as you can.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't make sense to exclude it. Again, it may be an oversight, but they sometimes,
I think
they do weird
it's
stuff.
ultimately driven by the Blueprint Denver, Trupti.
Okay, yeah, I'll double check both of those things, but thank you.
Good night, guys.
Good night. Thanks for staying.